Welcome everyone. This is the Indian Express of 6 September 2022 and I will explain this newspaper in 3 steps. First is why the news, second what is the news and third is what can be the future prospects of the news. So big news came today from Supreme Court about Karnataka hijab ban. So why is this news? Because there was a hijab controversy whether school going children can wear hijab as extra uniform or not. So what Supreme Court has said that this is statement, can you take right to practice religion to school with uniform? So what is the news? I will explain. Hearing on pleas challenging Karnataka High Court order to continue tomorrow. Now hearing petitions that challenge the Karnataka's High Court decision to uphold the restriction on wearing hijab in educational institutions. The Supreme Court on Monday said you may have a religious right to practice wherever you want, but can you take the right to a school which has a uniform? We will concede for a moment that you have a right to wear a scarf or hijab where you feel like, but can you wear that hijab to a school where uniform is prescribed? So Justice Hemant Gupta asked senior advocate Sanjay Hegde, who appeared for one of the petitioners, on the argument that the Karnataka Education Act 1983 was being invoked to deny education to some sections. The bench, also comprising Justice Sudhanshu Dhulia, said they are not saying that they are denying any right. What the state is saying is that you come with a uniform which is prescribed for a student. So this was the Karnataka Education Act 1983, which was invoked, and it was not to deny some education or anything, but it was to prescribe a uniform for students. Now the senior counsel who was there in the court tried to draw parallels between a chunni, which is a dupatta, and also hijab, and saying that chunni was already a part of uniform. But the court pointed out that the two couldn't be compared. So this Supreme Court has pointed out that the chunni, which is in the uniform, and the hijab, these two cannot be compared. There's a lot of difference, said Justice Thulia. If you are depicting a chunni as a hijab, you are probably not right. Chunni is used to cover the shoulders, said Justice Gupta. As Hegde submitted that chunni is also used by women to cover their heads in the presence of elders, Justice Gupta said no. In Punjab, that is not the culture. Sikh women use it to cover their heads when going to Gurudwara to pay obeisance, nothing more than that. So it's very clear that court was against the comparison between chunni and hijab or any headwear. The court said that in Punjab, this is not the culture to wear this chunni in head in front of elders, but it is a culture to wear chunni in the head when going to Gurudwara to pay obeisance. Now, senior advocate Rajiv Dhawan, who also appeared for the appellant, said as the matter involved constitutional issues such as whether wearing a hijab is essential religious practices. So this constitution bench now needs to look into it because it involves constitutional issue, whether it is an essential religious practice or not. So this was the main issue, I think, that is being circulated since this hijab controversy. Justice Gupta said the question could be modulated in a different way. It may or may not be an essential practice, but in a government institution, can you insist on religious practices? The preamble to our constitution says secular country. Now Dhawan said he has seen judges wearing tilak in the court. The senior counsel added in court too, there is a painting of a judge wearing a pagadi. The bench responded that wearing pagadi was a practice in royal states. Now Justice Gupta said his grandfather used to wear a pagadi while practicing wrought. Don't equate it with religious insignia. So there's a lot of controversy, I think, regarding the wearable things such as pagadi, tilak, or moving forward, what Supreme Court said about France that it practices a strict form of secularism and concerns a huge number, millions, who comply with the dress code but also wants to wear a hijab. This is a constitutional question. So in French, I think there is no uh, religious wear that you can wear in the school. Only uniform. Whether you are Punjabi, you are any belongs to any religion, you have to wear just from top to bottom the uniform that is prescribed, nothing else. He said the world would be watching the Supreme Court's decision. Hijab is something that affects a large number of countries and civilization. So Arab countries and all that also, their people wear hijab. He said, adding that Supreme Court decision will be of momentous importance. So obviously, a lot of countries are looking forward to India, that how the Supreme Court will react to this controversy. Recalling the developments leading to the government order on February 5 this year, Karnataka Advocate General P.K. Nawadgi said there was unrest and some educational institutions and also district authority has written to the government seeking guidance. So the GO only says that students shall wear uniform as determined by their government bodies. So whatever is being determined by the government bodies of that state, the students have to wear only that. The state was very conscious that we will not prescribe uniform to every institution. All that we say is Rule 11 of Karnataka Education Prescription of Curricular Rules provides that it is for every recognized educational institution to prescribe a uniform to the students. So for every recognized educational institutions. Therefore, since you are seeking directions from us, we hereby direct all educational institutions to prescribe a uniform for their students. So that is why Supreme Court said that educational institutions all have to prescribe a uniform for their students. Now, pursuant to this, educational institutions in the state prescribed uniform to their students, and some institutions chose to prohibit wearing hijab. So those resolutions or the decisions that have been taken by government or private school have not been called into question. The challenge came before High Court of this GO. So he said that my argument before the High Court, which was accepted, is this: GO does not interdict any of right of petitioners. We do not say wear hijab or do not wear. All that we say is follow rule number 11. So he said when the students realized these institutions invoked rule 11 to prohibit hijab, then they elevated their argument to say this was part of religious practices and violated rights under Article 25. So this was the whole issue that was in February 5. So in government colleges, authority was given to the College Development Council, which comprises of representative of students. It consists of parents, teachers, local MLA, 2 members of scheduled castes, 2 members of scheduled tribes, to prescribe the uniform, he said. Now in case of private schools, they have governing body which itself prescribes the dress. To query from the bench, he said there may be some recognized private educational institutions which have allowed the hijab, and added that they are free to take the decision because they are not controlled by government. So there may be educational institutions run by Islamic managements which have allowed it. As you know, the minorities are allowed to make their own educational institutions. It is being mentioned in the constitution also. So earlier in the hearing, Hegde questioned the scope of Karnataka Education Act and rules, and he asked that can you, students, be debarred from the classroom if you wear a particular dress? Can you make education to women contingent on their attire? Can you exclude someone from a college just because you think they wear a uniform that does not subscribe to the dress code? Can you tell a grown woman that she will not have control over her own idea of modesty? So these were all the questions that were raised by him. Now he contended that College Development Council that consists of local MLA and politicians has no legal sanctity under the Act. Also, Justice Gupta pointed out that a golf course also has a dress code. Can we say we will not follow it? He said. So then Hegde replied that a golf course is a private property. The bench pointed out that it is a public space. The bench then referred to restaurants which have dress code. Now Hegde replied that everything comes down to context. To Hegde's argument about the kind of education that the 1983 Act envisages, the court asked what it prohibits any fixation of dress culture. So this is being asked by court that whether it prohibits any fixation of dress culture, that the students can come in midis, whatever they want. So this is about wearing the proper dress code that is being prescribed. Court is trying to object that students cannot wear whatever they want. Now Hegde replied there is no such prescriptions at all. The bench responded that in case the executive power of the state will come in. Now this argument remained inconclusive and it will continue on Wednesday. So all these things are going on. So on March 15, a full bench of Karnataka High Court had dismissed a batch of petitions that was filed by Muslim girls who were studying in pre-university colleges in Udupi, and they were seeking the right to wear the hijab in the classroom. Now High Court have stated that wearing hijab is not an essential practice in Islam. So this is the statement from High Court that wearing hijab is not an essential practice of Islam, and the freedom of religion under Article 25 of the Constitution is subjected to reasonable restrictions. So you have to remember these three lines, very important. And then the Supreme Court decision that will come will also be important. The High Court has upheld the government order issued on February 5, which suggested that wearing hijab can be restricted in government colleges where uniform are prescribed and rules. And it ruled also that such curbs under norms for college uniforms are constitutionally permissible. So talking that uniform that has been prescribed by state can be prescribed, can be decided, and it is permissible by the Constitution of India. So for future we will see Wednesday, and the arguments have remained inconclusive. They will come forward, so we will discuss at that time. So in front page there is nothing more news. Then comes the word page. There were many pages up above, and they were of Uttar Pradesh, and nothing more important was there. So coming to word page, we see in headlines black that Truss speeds Sunak to become UK PM and vows to deliver bold plan to cut taxes. So in between Truss and Sunak, the Truss have won, and Boris Johnson will formally step down today. She is the third woman to be UK PM and faces a serious economic crisis. You can know that economic crisis is going on in Britain, United Kingdom. So what is the news? Britain Conservative Party announced on Monday that its member had chosen Liz Truss to replace Boris Johnson as leader, turning to a hawkish diplomat, party stalwart and free market champion to govern a country facing the gravest economic crisis in the generation. So Truss is 47. She prevailed over Rishi Sunak, who is a former Chancellor of Exchequer and whose resignation in July set in motion Johnson's messy ouster. So the margin is 57% for Liz Truss and 42.6% for Rishi Sunak. It was widely accepted in recent weeks after she took a commanding lead in the poll. So you can see this red line for Liz Truss and blue line for Rishi Sunak. So this is all about her, and Truss won this number of votes and Sunak this one. A margin that was comfortable, was not as overwhelming as some of the polls suggested it would be. So now what are the promises? So that will be important for, I think, British nationality more. We will see if something is related to India. So okay, I did not get anything that is being related to India. So either way, whether Rishi Sunak have one or Liz Truss, the relations would remain same. We'll see in the future whether how she pursues relationships with India also. So that was the news, and all have congratulated the Truss. Now coming to our next news, Zelensky says 2 towns liberated as gas cut hits Europe. So Ukrainian forces mount a counter-offensive against well-entrenched Russian soldiers across southern Ukraine. Now this President Volodymyr Zelensky offered a first public hints of progress in what is expected to be a slow and grueling campaign. So European markets reopened on Monday in a free fall after Russia kept its main gas pipeline to Germany shut. So energy crisis and more of energy crisis in Europe is going on, as most of the supply was coming from Europe. For Europe was coming from Russia. So because West have applied, you can say, procure sanctions for Russia, so they are taking revenge in the form of cutting gas supply to Europe. So nothing more here, I guess. Coming to economy page, GOM, which is group of minister meets, view diverge on tax valuation mechanism, rate tweaks. So GST group of ministers on casinos, race course and online gaming. So talking about GST application on casinos, race courses and also online gaming. So as the group of ministers on casinos, race course and online gaming met on Monday, so many diverged views emerged regarding the valuation mechanism for levying taxes and the GST regime. So many kind of views came, with some states stating that tax rate will remain 28% and discussions are required only for the valuation mechanism. So this is from one state that they are talking to keep taxes at 28% and only discuss the valuation mechanism, while some other states indicate that ratings could be charged differently for these categories, and there were consensus, however, on seeking legal opinion given the various precedents set by courts ruling on related matter, which are expected to be finalized in 7 to 10 days. So these two states are calling off different things. Now there is also a talk of seeking legal opinion also from the courts such as Supreme Court and High Courts. So this was being discussed. I think it will be important when the discussion will come to a conclusion. So it is now being discussed only. So when this will come in conclusion, so this is report likely after legal opinion. The 8-member ministerial panel headed by Meghalaya Chief Minister Conrad Sangma is expected to finalize its report after legal opinion and submit it to the GST Council, which is likely to meet later this month. So I'll explain you later this month about such report that will come. So discussions are important. If you would like to, then you can read it as well, but I think when the conclusion will come, that main point will be more important. So So this is US Fed comments infused significant volatility in global markets. This is by RBI governor. So he talked about the inflation that is going on. It's like worldwide inflation. And he talked that the recent commentary from the US Federal Reserve has infused substantial volatility into global financial markets with large spillovers and knock-on effect on emerging market economies. So this is the statement that RBI Governor Shaktikant Das have said. So he's talking that this episode is yet another demonstration of the point made in my media interview on August 23, 2022, that while forward guidance can be useful policy instrument in an accommodative monetary policy phase, it can be quite difficult to provide coherent and consistent guidance in the tightening cycle. So he's talking that the guidance that is a forward guidance by the all the emerging economies and also US Federal Reserves. So this can be useful policy instrument in accommodative monetary policy phase, but can be difficult to provide coherent and consistent guidance in tightening cycle. So this is the interview, and he is talking about that the US central bank's prioritization of inflation concerns over growth market across the world tanked in the wake of his comments. So I think he's discussing about the world economy more, and I guess the economies are intertwined and they affect each other, but still India is, you can say, a bright spot in the gloomy world economies, because they are not growing at a well maintained position, you can say. The UK's economy is in a great recession coming forward, and also US economy is not that well. China's economy is coming down. So India only have to be resilient and maintain whatever economy it has. It has been growing so far. Will give necessary stimulus to economy along with RBI. So this government and RBI will together extend necessary stimulus to maintain economic growth momentum. So this is what I was talking about, that you have to just maintain that momentum of economic growth even as the center strives to maintain fiscal rectitude. This is a statement that was given by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman on Monday. So speaking at the event of Elara Capital, Sitharaman also said the government is committed to announced plan for bank privatization, and she justified windfall taxes on abnormal profits by oil companies. So she's talking that this profits that is being earned by the oil companies in the wake of war and global situations, she justified that, and also talked that the GDP of India grew at a rate of 13.5% in the June quarter of fiscal year 23, and said that economy will likely see slower growth in the current quarter and coming few quarters due to waning of the base effect and also slowing of exports. So I'll talk about the statement that she gave. Together with the central bank, the Ministry of Finance will be working out a pathway which is predictable, consistent, and give every stimulus required for the growth of Indian economy. She is talking about government support which will give every stimulus that is required for the growth of Indian economy, along with central bank, which is RBI. So she is talking about cooperation and cooperating both RBI as well as Ministry of Finance to find a pathway. On taking forward the proposed bank privatization, the minister said the listing of Life Insurance Corporation was an indication of government's commitment to reforms and disinvestment. So this LIC was also in the list for disinvestment privatization. So she is talking that this was an indication of the government's commitment to reforms. So we shall go ahead with the banking sector reform as well. And she said we have mentioned it to the budget to privatize two banks, and we shall take it forward. So we will see in the future that two banks will be privatized, and also this LIC matter have come up itself now with her statement. So we will track this in the future as well. Now coming to the explain page, in misery death, new focus on old problems. So this is about the car crash that occurred in Mumbai of the Tata person who was dead. So I think this is not that important because this is of seats of a car and its seat belt. So I will talk only about India, what global trends in road safety show and why some Indians won't buckle up. So this is the death of Cyrus Mistry, which came after the National Crime Records Bureau. Accidental deaths and suicides in India showed report that 1.55 lakh individuals died in accidents on India's roads in 2021, up from the 1.33 lakh deaths in the pandemic lockdown of year 2020. So there is a law on seat belts. Seat belts are compulsory, both the front and back seats. Section 194(b)(1) of the Motor Vehicles Amendment Act 2019 says whoever drives a motor vehicle without wearing a safety belt or carries passengers not wearing a seat belts shall be punishable with a fine of 1,000 rupees. So this is mandatory to wear a seat belt in both front seat and back seat. But what is the current status? The current status is Indians don't care about their safety. It has been argued that for most Indians, the safety of a car or a particular ride is the secondary to the cost and creature comfort. Some taxi drivers have a seatbelt buckled, but they aren't strapped in themselves. So they only slide in when there are traffic police around. So two-wheelers don't wear helmets or wear hard hats or cricket helmets that offer very little protection in case a crash. Problem is that if one believes that Indians are irrational about safety, it is difficult to visualize a sustainable solution. So we have seen this in like every city. People don't wear helmet, don't wear seat belt. They only wear it when traffic police or some police is there. Also, Indians don't want to spend more on safer cars. So the car is a luxury in India, as you know, and just buying car is important. They do not look at the technicality, or some people obviously looks for airbags and all, but most of them do not. They just go for the design and everything. And India suffers from poor enforcement of laws. So also no checking and everything. This also occurs in India also, and fines are taken, but when there is traffic police around, they wear a seat belt, so there's no matter of fine and all. So I think there should be awareness, and also this incident must strike the minds of the people. I think problem is in technicality as well as mindset. When this will change, India will come up with more safety. So coming up at Ladakh, India's first dark sky reserve. So this is by Minister of State for Science and Technology. He said that by the end of 2022, India will establish its first dark sky reserve in the cold desert regions of Ladakh. So what is dark sky reserve? Dark sky reserve is a public or private land with distinguished nocturnal environment and starry nights that has been developed responsibly to prevent light pollution. So according to International Dark Sky Association website, these reserves consist of a core area which is meeting minimum criteria for sky quality, and natural darkness and a peripheral area that supports dark sky preservation in the core. So this is about dark sky that is will be placed. And earning the tag, so individual or groups can nominate a site for the certification of IDSA. There are 5 design categories. First is international dark sky parks, communities, reserves, sanctuaries, urban night sky. So this certificate is also awarded the UNESCO. It's like a UNESCO World Heritage Site tag, or getting recognized as a biosphere reserves. So what is India's efforts? The Ladakh Union Territory Administration is leading the effort in establishing the country's first dark sky reserve, to be situated at the height of 4,500 meters above the sea level, which is the name is Hanle Dark Sky Reserves, will come up with the Shangthang Wildlife Sanctuary. Now this Department of Science and Technology and experts from the IIA, which is Indian Institutes of Astrophysics, Bangalore, these are providing scientific and technological support in developing the first of its kind facility. So this is the first time that India is going to create and witness a dark sky reserve. So these two, Department of Science and Technology and also IIA, are providing scientific and technical support. The IIA already manages the Indian Astronomical Observatory, which is at Hanle. Now the formal decision to set up this reserve was made through an memorandum of understanding which was signed between officials from this IIA, the Ladakh Union Territory and Ladakh Autonomous Hill Development Council in June this year. So question may rise in the mind, why Ladakh? So because Ladakh is a unique cold desert. You know, Ladakh is a cold desert, it's not a hot desert, and has high mountainous terrains. So long and harsh winters with minimum temperatures dropping to at least minus 40 degrees Celsius makes large part of Union Territory uninhabitable. Also the aridity and limited vegetation, as well as high elevation and also large areas which have sparse population, all make it the perfect setting for long-term astronomical observations and dark sky places. But the primary objective of the proposed dark sky is to promote astronomy tourism. So this is a new kind of scene that you will see in Ladakh. Now IIA scientists and outreach experts will also identify locals and train them to use easy to handle telescopes. Now these telescopes will be installed at homestays, which is popular accommodation facility in Ladakh, the 22-kilometer radius around the Hanle Observatory, where the core dark sky reserves will stand. It will have restrictions imposed on outdoor lighting. All the vehicles will be barred from using high beam headlights, and houses here will be encouraged to use curtains of darker shades, install light reflecting shields, and switch off all unwanted illumination. So this is like watching the starry nights and everything from Ladakh. So interesting, but I hope people do not get suffered because there's a lot of restrictions here also. So we will see in the future how this is made and how interesting is that in terms of watching from land to the sky. So coming this to an end of the newspaper, today's newspaper, I think this was an interesting news, and the most important I think was only one news, which was Supreme Court news, and you can read this newspaper as well.